I still remember the night everything started to crack, the night that should have been a celebration of love but instead turned into the first domino in a chain of betrayal, humiliation, and eventually liberation. My name is James Carter, a Manhattan lawyer who built his reputation on exposing lies in courtrooms, yet the cruelest irony of all is that the biggest lie of my life was sitting right across the dinner table every evening, smiling sweetly like nothing was wrong. It was our wedding anniversary, the kind of night my wife Rachel Evans loved to flaunt online with perfectly filtered pictures of candlelight, roses, and champagne. She was always obsessed with appearances, the flawless Instagrammable version of our marriage that made her followers envy her life. And me? I played along, not because I believed in it, but because it was easier than questioning the unease that had been simmering inside me for years. That evening, I had arranged a surprise, a bouquet of 999 roses, a grand gesture meant to silence the faint whisper in my chest that something about us wasn't right. I thought if I outdid myself, maybe she would look at me the way she used to, back when we were broke students sharing cheap coffee in a corner cafe. But fate has a way of laughing at desperate men. It was Sophie, my niece, sharp-eyed and innocent, who ruined the illusion with a single observation, "Uncle James, why are there only 998 roses instead of 999? I froze. Everyone laughed it off as a child's miscount, even Rachel brushed it aside with her signature giggle, the one that used to melt me but now grated like nails on glass. But I knew Sophie was right. There were only 998. One missing flower shouldn't mean anything, right? A trivial error from the florist. But my gut told me otherwise. My gut screamed it was a signal, a hidden code in the language of betrayal, and in that moment, every faint memory of Rachel lingering too long in that flower shop, of her smiling a little too brightly at Michael Green, the florist with the perfectly rolled sleeves and artsy tattoos, came crashing back like a flood I had been trying to hold back with bare hands. I laughed it off in front of the family, of course. I had to. You can't let people smell blood in the water when you're the one drowning. But later that night, while Rachel was showering, I picked up her phone. I'm a lawyer, I know the law, I know privacy rights, I know this was crossing a line. But you don't live with suspicion this sharp without trying to cut through it. The evidence was right there, years of flower orders, every single one preserved in full detail. Rachel never kept records like that. She deleted receipts, messages, anything that cluttered her life. Yet with Michael Green, she kept everything, as if every rose, every petal, every delivery carried sentimental weight. That wasn't love for me. That was love for him. My pulse hammered so loud I couldn't even hear the water running anymore. I scrolled deeper, finding pictures Rachel never showed me, posts Michael made that I never noticed, captions that weren't explicit but might as well have been. Some connections can't be explained, only felt. Posted the exact same day as our anniversary. The same day Rachel was in his shop, picking up those damn roses. I felt my chest tighten, a cocktail of rage and heartbreak, but I swallowed it down. I couldn't explode yet. Explosions need timing. I confronted her casually the next morning, bringing up Michael like it was nothing, like I was just curious. She stiffened for a second, then smiled too quickly, denying any impropriety. But her eyes gave her away. I told her to delete his contact, told her if she respected me, respected this marriage, she'd cut him off. She pretended to agree, but I knew better. You can't legislate loyalty, not even when you're a lawyer. From that day on, the distance between us grew, like two continents drifting apart. We ate in silence, slept with our backs turned, and lived like strangers under the same expensive roof in Manhattan. Online, Rachel still played the perfect wife, uploading pictures of us smiling at galas, tagging me in posts that screamed couple goals. But I knew it was all a performance, staged for her followers, her investors, her brand. Behind the filters and hashtags, our marriage was rotting from the inside, and I was the only one who seemed to notice. Or maybe she noticed too but didn't care, because she already had someone else filling the spaces I couldn't reach. And yet, as much as it hurt, as much as my pride burned every time I saw her typing on her phone with that secret smile, I didn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Because if you've ever built a case in court, you know you don't strike until the evidence is airtight. I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof so undeniable that not even Rachel could twist her way out of it. The missing rose was just the beginning. It was the crack in the dam, and I knew the flood was coming. What I didn't know was just how much it would wash away my marriage, my trust, even parts of myself I thought were unshakable. But here's the thing, when you've been lied to for long enough, when the person you loved becomes the stranger who destroys you, the pain eventually turns into something else. It turns into clarity. And clarity, my friends, is power. That's where my story really begins, with one missing flower on the night that was supposed to celebrate love, but instead exposed betrayal that would set fire to everything I thought I knew. I knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot, because when someone deletes a number under pressure it doesn't erase the urge to call, it doesn't erase the secret history that's already been written in late-night texts and exchanged glances, it just forces them underground, and Rachel was nothing if not good at curating appearances. She had built her career on the art of presentation, turning Evan's fashion group into a glittering brand by knowing exactly how much truth to show and how much to hide, and I realized with sick clarity that she had been doing the same with our marriage, filtering it like an Instagram story, giving me just enough smiles to keep me quiet while pouring her real self into someone else's arms. Michael Green wasn't just a florist anymore in my head, he was the shadow that trailed behind Rachel every time she left the apartment with an excuse that didn't add up. He was the ghost in every notification that lit up her phone and made her lips curve in that subtle smile she never wore for me anymore. I started noticing patterns, because that's what I do as a lawyer, I track inconsistencies until the case unravels. Rachel would suddenly need to step out for a late meeting, at the same times Michael posted vague quotes on his profile about passion, destiny, or some crap about two souls finding each other. She said she was exhausted from work, but her hair smelled like roses every time she came home, roses I hadn't bought. She guarded her phone like it was a vault, sleeping with it tucked under her pillow, a move so obvious it was laughable. And the more she tightened her grip on her secrets, the more I tightened mine on the evidence. I screenshotted Michael's posts, archived every message I could recover, and started building a file the way I'd build a legal case: organized, airtight, undeniable. I didn't need a smoking gun yet, because sometimes the trail of smoke is damning enough. Still, I wanted her to slip, I wanted her to confirm what I already knew, so I started testing her. Casual comments, like asking if she remembered deleting Michael's number, watching how her hand froze for a second before she sipped her wine, or bringing up Sophie's innocent remark about the missing rose just to see her face harden in a flash before she forced a laugh. These were micro-expressions, tiny cracks in the mask, but I caught every single one. And you know what's funny? On social media, she doubled down on the act. More couple selfies, more captions like, "So blessed to have this man by my side forever love." She thought the hashtags would cover the truth, but I knew those posts weren't for me, they were for her audience, her investors, maybe even for Michael, some twisted performance to prove she still had control of the narrative. The internet clapped for her, thousands of likes, heart emojis, and comments from women who envied her perfect husband without knowing she was already slipping away with another man. It was surreal, living in a marriage that looked flawless on the outside but was crumbling in silence behind closed doors. The silence was the worst. We barely talked, and when we did, it was clipped and cold. Breakfast was her scrolling through her phone, me sipping black coffee like it was the only thing holding me together. Nights were spent in the same bed but miles apart, her back turned, my eyes staring at the ceiling wondering when the breaking point would come. But part of me still hoped, still clung to the idea that maybe if I confronted her hard enough, if I pushed her into the corner of truth, she'd confess, apologize, and we could rebuild. That's what love does to you, it makes you believe in redemption even when the facts scream otherwise. One night I finally broke the silence. I asked her point blank if she was still in contact with Michael. She swore she wasn't, swore on her career, her family, even on me. Her voice shook but her eyes didn't, and I realized in that instant she had crossed the line of no return. Lies come easy to people who are already living them. I told her I didn't believe her, told her I wanted to see her messages, and that's when she snapped, called me paranoid, insecure, controlling. Funny how cheaters always flip the script. I didn't yell back. I just looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years I saw her not as my wife but as a stranger rehearsing lines for a play. I knew then that we were done. Maybe not officially, maybe not on paper, but emotionally, spiritually, whatever word you want to use, the bond was severed. And yet, I didn't file for divorce that night. No, I bided my time, because divorce is not just an ending, it's a war, and wars are won with strategy, not impulse. I needed her to reveal herself completely, needed her to make the mistake that would hand me the victory. And she did. Days later, I stumbled on Michael's profile again, and there it was, a photo that didn't name her, didn't tag her, but the caption was damning: "Some journeys are worth every risk." The timestamp matched exactly with the night Rachel claimed to be at a business dinner. The pieces clicked into place so perfectly it was almost insulting. I saved it, archived it, and added it to the growing file I was building against her. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. This was evidence. I wasn't just a hurt husband anymore. I was a lawyer preparing his case, and my client was me. But here's the thing: when you live in deceit long enough, the pressure builds, and pressure has only one destiny: it explodes. I knew the explosion was coming. I knew the confrontation, the fight, the collapse were inevitable. And when it happened, when the lies finally came crashing down, it wouldn't just destroy Rachel's version of our marriage, it would shatter her carefully curated empire too. Because secrets might survive in private, but in public, under the spotlight she loved so much, they always burn. This was the calm before the storm, and as much as it tore me apart, part of me was already ready to watch her empire of roses turn into ashes. The thing about living with suspicion is that it doesn't let you rest, it doesn't let you breathe, it eats at you like a parasite gnawing inside your chest, and even when you try to distract yourself with work, with deadlines, with late nights in the office surrounded by files and case briefs, the thought keeps coming back: who is she texting, where is she really going, why is she smiling like that when it isn't because of me? And I swear the more I tried to bury it, the more the universe kept handing me pieces of truth, like it wanted me to see the full picture whether I was ready or not. Rachel thought she was clever, she thought she could manage me the way she managed her board of directors or her investors, with polished words and perfect timing, but I'm not some shareholder waiting for quarterly results, I'm her husband, or at least I used to be, and I've built my whole career on spotting contradictions that unravel testimonies in court. It started with little things: the way her phone never left her hand, the way she would turn the screen slightly away from me when a notification popped up, the way she suddenly cared about her appearance for the most random errands, like going out to grab coffee at 8 in the evening dressed like she was stepping onto a runway. And of course there was Michael Green, the florist, who suddenly seemed to be everywhere, not just in her phone history but in her online world, posting vague captions like "Some souls cross paths for a reason," or "Every petal tells a story," and every damn time the timestamp lined up perfectly with a night Rachel had an excuse. I didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to know the story being written here, but the lawyer in me demanded more than hunches, so I started keeping track. Screenshots of his posts, records of her supposed business dinners, notes about when she left, when she came back, what she wore, the smell of roses that clung to her hair even though I hadn't bought her flowers in weeks. I was building a case file, not against some corporation or criminal, but against the woman I had vowed to spend my life with, and that realization stung more than any betrayal. Still, I kept quiet, because timing is everything, and if you've ever watched a liar long enough, you know they eventually trip over their own stories. One night she came home late, claimed she had been with a designer finalizing sketches, but her phone buzzed while she was in the shower, and the preview on the lock screen showed Michael's name. She had resaved his number under some code name, probably thinking I'd never notice, but you can't erase fingerprints once you've left them all over the scene. I didn't unlock her phone, not then, I didn't need to, because the notification itself was enough to confirm what I already knew: she had never cut him off, she had just hidden him deeper. The next morning I tested her, asked casually about her dinner, and she spun her story with ease, details lined up, but her eyes flickered when I mentioned Michael, a split second of panic before she smiled and called me paranoid. That's the thing about liars, they can polish their words but their bodies betray them. I didn't argue, I didn't shout, I just nodded, storing the information, adding another piece to the puzzle, waiting for the right moment. And while all this was happening, online she was posting even more aggressively, photos of us at charity events, captions dripping with "Love my husband," pictures where she clung to me like I was her world, when in reality she had already built another orbit with him at the center. Thousands of likes, endless comments about how perfect we looked together, but I couldn't stand looking at those posts anymore because I knew every pixel was a lie, every hashtag a cover-up. It was like watching a movie where you already know the ending but you're forced to sit through the performance anyway. The silence between us grew unbearable. We didn't fight every day, sometimes we didn't even speak, and when we did, it was more like business partners negotiating schedules than a husband and wife sharing a life. She spent more nights out, I spent more nights at the firm, and our apartment in Manhattan became less of a home and more of a stage set for her curated narrative. Still, I held back, because you don't take a case to trial before it's ready. I knew the storm was coming, I could feel the air thickening with tension, and deep down I was already preparing for war. But some part of me, maybe the foolish part that still remembered the girl I fell in love with, hoped she would come clean, hoped she would break down and confess and maybe give me a reason to believe we could fix it. That hope died the night I found the photo. Michael posted a picture of a sunset, vague enough to seem harmless, but the reflection in his sunglasses betrayed him, Rachel's silhouette right there beside him. He didn't tag her, didn't mention her, but I knew that figure, I knew her posture, I knew my wife even when she was trying not to be seen. That was the proof I had been waiting for, the undeniable evidence that turned suspicion into fact. I saved it, printed it, tucked it into the file I had been building. Now I wasn't just a hurt husband, I was a man armed with truth, and truth is a weapon sharper than any blade. That night when she came home, I didn't say a word, I just watched her as she slipped off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine like nothing was wrong, and I realized this was the woman who had chosen performance over honesty, illusion over loyalty, and I couldn't decide if I hated her or pitied her. But I knew one thing for certain, our marriage had crossed the point of no return. She thought she could keep juggling both lives forever, but every performance ends when the curtain falls, and I was about to be the one to cut the strings. What she didn't know was that every lie she told me, every secret meeting, every hidden text had already set the stage for her downfall, because when I confronted her next time, I wasn't coming empty-handed. I was coming with evidence, with precision, with the cold fire of a man betrayed but not broken. And that, I promise you, would be the beginning of the end for Rachel Evans. The confrontation didn't happen the way I imagined it, there was no shouting match in the middle of the night, no dramatic movie-style scene where I slammed down photos and demanded answers, no, it unfolded quieter, colder, and infinitely sharper, like a blade pressed against the skin without breaking it yet. I had the proof in my hand, that picture of Michael with Rachel's reflection burned into my mind, and I thought I'd be ready to unleash it, but when the moment came, when she was standing right in front of me swirling her glass of wine like she didn't have the weight of 1,000 lies strapped to her, I didn't rage, I didn't scream, I smiled. And that smile scared her more than anything else, I saw it in the way her eyes flickered, the way her hand froze mid-sip, because deep down she knew the game was over. I started simple, asked her how her day was, watched her spin her rehearsed story, flawless delivery like always, except this time I had the script in my hand and I knew all her lines. So I leaned back, pulled out the printed photo, slid it across the table, and said, "That's funny, Rachel, because according to this, you weren't where you said you were." Her face drained of color so fast it was like watching paint being stripped from a wall, and for a split second the mask cracked, the polished perfect wife facade shattered, but then she regrouped, tried to laugh it off, claimed it was an old picture, said I was overthinking. That's the thing about lies, once you've told so many, you don't even bother keeping them believable anymore. I didn't even argue, I just laid out the rest: screenshots, timestamps, notes, every piece of evidence stacked like exhibits in a courtroom. And in that moment, I wasn't her husband anymore, I was the prosecutor, and she was the defendant caught in a web of her own contradictions. She tried denial, she tried tears, she tried anger, but none of it could erase the truth sitting right there between us. Finally she broke, admitted enough without saying it directly, a half-confession tangled in excuses about loneliness, about me working too much, about how Michael understood her in ways I didn't. Hearing it felt like someone was pouring acid straight into my chest, but instead of crumbling, I felt this eerie calm. Because once betrayal is confirmed, pain hardens into clarity, and clarity into resolve. I told her it was over. Just like that. No drawn-out negotiations, no bargaining, no second chances. She tried to grab my arm, begged me not to ruin the image we had built, the brand we had cultivated together, because that's what I was to her now, not a husband, not a partner, but a brand, a status symbol. That was the final nail in the coffin. I walked away, went into the study, pulled out the divorce papers I had already drafted in secret, and placed them in front of her. She stared at them like they were written in a foreign language, like she couldn't believe the man who had once adored her enough to buy 999 roses was now cold enough to end it with a single signature. But that's the reality of betrayal. You don't get a slow fade, you get a guillotine drop. From that night on, we were two strangers coexisting in the same apartment, waiting for the paperwork to finalize. Online, she still tried to play the role, still posted pictures of us smiling, still tagged me in fake forever posts, but I stopped liking them, stopped commenting, stopped participating in the performance. People noticed, of course, whispers started in our social circle, DMs came from friends asking if everything was okay, but I didn't owe them an explanation. I owed myself freedom. The nights got quieter, the silence thicker, and Rachel's desperation grew louder. She'd show up in my office wearing dresses she knew used to disarm me, she'd try to cook my favorite meals, she'd cry in the hallway where she knew I could hear. But none of it worked, because once trust is broken, love doesn't fix it, it just dies in silence. What she didn't realize was that every attempt to pull me back only pushed me further, because I could see through the act now, I could see the strings she was trying to pull, and I wasn't her puppet anymore. And while she was scrambling to salvage the image, I was already planning my exit, not just from her, but from the entire illusion of the life we had built. I began shifting assets quietly, consulting with colleagues I trusted, preparing for the financial war I knew was coming, because divorcing someone like Rachel wasn't just ending a marriage, it was dismantling a brand she had staked her entire identity on. I wasn't just taking myself back, I was pulling away the stage she had been performing on for years. And here's the part that might shock some of you: as much as it hurt, as much as it burned, I wasn't just angry at her, I was angry at myself for ignoring the signs, for playing along with the charade, for letting her feed me crumbs of affection while giving someone else the feast. That anger wasn't weakness, though. It became fuel. Fuel for rebuilding, fuel for revenge, fuel for making sure that when this story was finally told, it wouldn't be about Rachel Evans, the victim of a cold husband, it would be about James Carter, the man who turned betrayal into liberation. And as much as I wanted to walk away quietly, some part of me knew Rachel wouldn't let that happen. She was too invested in the performance, too addicted to the likes, the admiration, the envy. She'd fight to keep her mask on, even if it meant dragging me through hell. But here's the thing: hell doesn't scare a man who's already been living in it. And that's where part 4 of this story begins, not with an ending, but with a battlefield, where love turns into litigation, where betrayal turns into strategy, and where I stop being the husband she betrayed and start being the man who takes back everything she thought she stole from me. Divorce is not just the end of a marriage, it's war dressed up in paperwork, and if you've never been through it with someone like Rachel Evans, you can't imagine how brutal it gets, because this wasn't just about two people splitting up, this was about image, reputation, power, and control, and she would rather burn the whole house down than let anyone see her lose. The moment the papers hit the table, she switched modes instantly, no more tears, no more begging, just cold calculation, like a CEO prepping for a hostile takeover, and honestly I expected nothing less. She tried to spin it at first, telling me we could negotiate privately, that airing dirty laundry would ruin both of us, but what she really meant was that she wanted to control the narrative, to make sure she came out looking like the wronged wife while I became the villain in her curated storyline. But here's the thing, I wasn't about to let her weaponize my silence. I had the receipts, literal and digital, and I wasn't afraid to use them. Lawyers got involved almost immediately, her team versus mine, and it felt like every conference room we stepped into turned into an arena where words were weapons and evidence was ammunition. She tried to freeze assets, tried to paint me as neglectful, tried to claim I had abandoned her emotionally, and I let her talk, I let her pile on accusation after accusation, because I knew that when my turn came, I could drop proof so solid it would crush her entire narrative. And when I finally laid it all out, the messages, the receipts, the photo with Michael, her attorney, shifted uncomfortably, because even they knew they were fighting a losing battle. Still, Rachel never backed down, she doubled down, turning to social media to play her favorite role, the brave wife enduring hardship. Suddenly her posts were full of cryptic captions about healing, about betrayal, about starting over, never naming me directly but making sure the world knew she was suffering. And the comments rolled in, thousands of strangers taking her side, calling me a monster, telling her to stay strong. It was infuriating, but also kind of hilarious, because none of them knew the truth, none of them saw the screenshots tucked neatly in my folder. And I could have gone public, I could have exposed her, but I didn't. Not yet. Timing is everything, and the longer she played the victim, the sweeter it would be when the mask finally shattered. Meanwhile, Michael tried to disappear, deleting posts, going silent online, but you can't erase footprints once they're embedded in digital concrete, and I had already saved enough to bury them both. Still, seeing his name made my blood boil in a way I can't even put into words, because he wasn't just a side character in this mess, he was the spark that lit the fire, and part of me wanted to destroy him as much as I wanted to walk away from her. But revenge is best served cold, and I knew his time would come. As the weeks dragged on, our apartment turned into a battlefield. We barely spoke except through lawyers, every glance a dagger, every word a chess move, and yet online she kept pretending, uploading old photos of us, recycling captions about love, as if the world couldn't tell the difference between past and present. It was almost comical, watching her cling to a fantasy while the reality was collapsing all around her. Friends started taking sides, some drifting toward her, others quietly reaching out to me, and I learned quickly that divorce shows you who's real and who's just another spectator in the circus. Nights were the worst, not because I missed her, God no, that part of me was dead, but because the silence forced me to confront how much of my life I had wasted on someone who never valued me. And the anger that rose from that realization wasn't destructive, it was clarifying. I started working out harder, taking late-night runs through Manhattan, hitting the gym like it was therapy, and every drop of sweat felt like I was burning off the weakness she had fed on. I started posting too, not in a petty way, but enough to show the world I wasn't broken, that I wasn't hiding, that I was rebuilding stronger than ever. And the likes, the messages, the support that came flooding in, it wasn't validation, it was fuel. Rachel saw it, I know she did, and it rattled her, because she thrived on the narrative of me being the cold, heartless husband, and here I was reinventing myself right in front of everyone. The legal battle escalated when she demanded alimony, as if she hadn't been the one siphoning my energy and loyalty for years while giving her heart to someone else, and my lawyer almost laughed when he read her list of demands. We pushed back hard, brought out every piece of evidence, and slowly her leverage started crumbling. That's when she tried one last card, public sympathy. She leaked just enough to the tabloids to make herself look fragile, the poor woman abandoned by her ambitious husband, and I'll admit, seeing my name in headlines stung, but I held my ground. Because truth doesn't need to scream, it just needs to stand tall when lies collapse. And collapse they did. Word got out about Michael, whispers turned into conversations, and soon even her supporters started questioning the cracks in her story. Screenshots I had kept quietly began to circulate, not by me, but by people who had seen too much to stay silent, and the carefully curated Rachel Evans image began to fracture under the weight of reality. Watching it happen was surreal, like watching a skyscraper collapse in slow motion, piece by piece, until the whole thing came crashing down. And here's the thing: I didn't feel joy, not really, I felt relief. Relief that the truth was finally free, that I didn't have to carry it alone anymore, that the mask was off and the world could finally see her for who she really was. But even as her world started to crumble, I knew she wasn't done, because people like Rachel don't surrender, they plot comebacks, they claw at whatever scraps of power they can find. And that's exactly why I couldn't let my guard down, because the fight wasn't just about divorce anymore, it was about survival, about making sure I came out of this not just alive but stronger, sharper, untouchable. Which brings me to the next chapter, the part where everything shifts, where the battle with Rachel turns into something bigger, where I realize that walking away isn't enough, not when there are still debts to settle and truths to expose. Part 5 isn't about ending a marriage, it's about transformation, about revenge, and about finally stepping into the life I should have been living all along. Revenge is a strange thing. People on the outside think it's about rage, about screaming, about striking back in a blaze of fury, but real revenge isn't loud, it's quiet, it's calculated, it's the slow and steady dismantling of the illusion your enemy built, and by the time they realize what's happening, it's already too late to stop it. That's exactly where I found myself after the divorce battle with Rachel began tipping in my favor. She had spent years curating her life like a brand campaign, selling the world on this perfect wife, this perfect marriage, this perfect image of love and loyalty, but now the cracks were too wide to cover, and my only job was to widen them until the mask crumbled completely. I didn't just want to walk away free, I wanted her to feel the weight of every lie, every betrayal, every smug look she gave me while she thought she was getting away with it. So I rebuilt myself in front of her, not behind closed doors but in the open where the world could see. I started posting again, but not the hollow corporate shots she loved, no, I posted raw moments, late-night gym sessions, city skyline views with captions about resilience, courtroom victories, dinners with friends who actually gave a damn about me, and the response was overwhelming. People weren't pitying me, they were cheering me on, rooting for me, calling me an inspiration, and every notification was like fuel on the fire. Rachel saw it all, I know she did, because suddenly her posts became desperate imitations of mine, her captions more hollow than ever, her smiles more forced, and the comments started shifting. People asked why she wasn't with me, people wondered where the love had gone, people who once worshipped her now questioned her. That was my revenge, not slander, not tabloid wars, but letting the truth shine so bright it burned away her lies. At the same time, I made sure Michael couldn't just fade quietly into the background. The man who thought he could steal my wife and walk away with her like some prize wasn't going to get a clean slate. I didn't have to touch him directly, I didn't have to scream his name, all I had to do was let his own mistakes catch up to him. I handed the right evidence to the right people, a whisper here, a screenshot there, and soon his own reputation began to sink. Clients stopped showing up at his shop, collaborations fell through, his little artsy florist image cracked under the pressure of whispers about the married woman he ruined her home with. He wasn't strong enough to handle the storm, and I didn't even have to lift a finger beyond nudging the dominoes. Meanwhile, Rachel's legal strategy collapsed faster than her social media narrative. Her demands for alimony turned into jokes once the court saw the evidence, her attempts to freeze my accounts backfired, and slowly but surely I secured everything that was rightfully mine. But it wasn't just about money or property, it was about control, and every win was a reminder to her that the man she thought she could manipulate was gone. I had become something else entirely, not the husband begging for her attention, not the fool buying her roses while she laughed behind my back, but the man who had survived betrayal and turned it into power. And with that power came clarity about my next step. Because revenge isn't complete just because you win in court or online, no, true revenge is when you rise so far above the wreckage that your very existence becomes a reminder of what they lost, what they can never touch again. So I leaned into the grind. I took bigger cases at the firm, cases that made headlines, and every time my name was in the news attached to another victory, it was like carving my initials into the walls of her downfall. I traveled more, I expanded my network, I lived louder, freer, and sharper than I ever had before, and the irony is that none of it was for her, it was for me. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good knowing she was watching. Because Rachel never disappeared, not really, she lurked in the shadows of mutual friends, in the corners of social feeds, in the occasional email that pretended to be casual but reeked of regret. She tried to position herself as reborn, independent, stronger than ever, but you could see the cracks in every word, the insecurity in every photo. She wasn't reborn, she was scrambling, and the world could tell. And as for Michael, he was already gone, a ghost of the man who once thought he was untouchable, and honestly, he wasn't even worth the energy anymore. The real victory was the silence, the peace, the life I built without them. And yet, as much as I had rebuilt, as much as I had risen, I knew the story wasn't finished. Because betrayal doesn't just vanish when the ink dries on divorce papers, it lingers, it leaves scars, and those scars either break you or become your armor. Mine had become armor, and I could feel that the final act was still waiting, the moment where I would close this chapter not with bitterness but with finality. Part 6 isn't about Rachel anymore, it isn't even about revenge, it's about me, about transformation, about taking the ashes of what they tried to burn and using them to forge something unbreakable. And when that final chapter comes, the world won't remember me as the man who got cheated on, but as the man who turned betrayal into his greatest power. Closure is a word people throw around like it's something you can order off a menu, like one day you just wake up, say you're over it, and boom, you're free, but that's not how it works, not when betrayal has carved itself into your bones the way Rachel and Michael carved into mine. Closure isn't given, it's built, it's fought for, it's earned through blood, sweat, and nights where you stare at the ceiling wondering how you ever let yourself become blind to the obvious, and now, standing here. Months after the final signature on those divorce papers, I finally understand that closure isn't about them, it's about me. Because Rachel lost long before the judge finalized anything, she lost the moment she traded loyalty for vanity, she lost the moment she thought likes and followers were worth more than love, and Michael, well, he was never even in the game, just a side character whose 15 minutes of relevance burned out faster than one of his scented candles, but me. I didn't lose, I transformed. The man I was before, the husband desperate to please, the lawyer who could fight the world but went home and ignored the war in his own bed, that man died the night I laid those divorce papers on the table. What rose from the ashes is someone sharper, stronger, and unapologetically real. I didn't just move on, I leveled up. The firm made me partner sooner than expected, partly because of my wins in court, partly because they saw the fire in me that wasn't there before, and I leaned into it, took every challenge head-on, and built a reputation not just as a skilled attorney but as someone untouchable, someone who doesn't flinch, doesn't break, doesn't bend. Outside of work, I rebuilt too. I stopped living for Rachel's staged photo ops and started living for myself. Real friends came back into the picture, the ones who weren't afraid of uncomfortable truths, the ones who didn't care about hashtags or headlines. I traveled, not to flaunt but to breathe, to stand on cliffs overlooking oceans and remind myself that the world is bigger than betrayal. And yeah, I shared some of it online, but not as curated illusions, raw posts, messy captions, the kind of honesty people resonate with because it's real, and the crazy part is that those posts went viral more than Rachel's fake perfection ever did. Because the internet might be addicted to fantasy, but deep down it craves authenticity, and authenticity was all I had left to give. Meanwhile, Rachel kept trying to claw her way back into relevance, launching half-baked projects, collaborations that fizzled, posts that reeked of desperation, and each one was another reminder that while I had evolved, she had stagnated, trapped in the same cycle of pretending, performing, begging for validation from strangers. People moved on, the spotlight shifted, and the empire she built on lies collapsed quietly while she screamed louder, but fewer and fewer people were listening. And me? I didn't even need to say her name anymore. My success, my peace, my transformation, that was the loudest revenge I could have asked for. But closure isn't just about rising, it's also about forgiving yourself, and that was the hardest part. Forgiving myself for staying too long, for ignoring the signs, for letting my worth be tied to someone who couldn't see it. That forgiveness didn't come overnight, it came slowly, through nights at the gym where I pushed until my body gave out, through victories in court where I proved to myself I was still sharp, through quiet mornings with coffee where I realized I didn't miss her voice, her laugh, or her presence. I missed the version of myself I used to be before I let her drain me. And little by little, I found him again, but stronger, armored by scars that no one could take from me. People still ask sometimes, in whispers or DMs, if I would ever take Rachel back if she begged, if she changed, if she proved herself, and the answer is simple, no. Because some bridges aren't just burned, they're bombed into dust, and even if you tried to rebuild them, you'd be walking on ruins. Rachel will always be a lesson, not a chapter 1 revisit. As for Michael, he vanished completely, no shop, no posts, no trace, and I don't even waste thought on him anymore. He was never the real enemy, he was just the proof of Rachel's choices, and my revenge on him was letting him fade into irrelevance while I kept rising. The real victory is that they no longer matter. Their names don't choke me, their memories don't haunt me, they're background noise in a story that became about me, not them. And if you're reading this, wondering what the takeaway is, here it is: betrayal doesn't define you unless you let it, pain doesn't break you unless you surrender to it, and closure doesn't arrive like a package on your doorstep. You build it, brick by brick, scar by scar, until one day you look in the mirror and realize you're not the broken man they left behind, you're the unbreakable man they accidentally forged. That's my ending, or maybe it's my beginning, because life after Rachel Evans isn't about revenge anymore, it's about freedom, about authenticity, about finally owning every part of myself without apology. Part 6 is the finale of this story, but not of my life, because my life is just getting started, and if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that the best revenge, the best closure, the best transformation isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right.